Hey everyone, welcome to Chili at Sunrise. My name's Chili Chilton, pastor of Sunrise Church in Rogers City, Michigan. So glad you're part of this teaching today. We are in a brand new series starting today. So I'm excited. If this is your first time with us, it's a great jumping in point. And if you've been here every week, thank you. Thank you for being our support team and being part of our weekly teaching time. Really excited about today and glad that you could be part of it. So today, we're going to be talking about Jonah. Now, most people are familiar with Jonah and the whale, and we hear stories about him, and there's cartoons, and there's children's books, and different things. And even if you're from the secular side of life, and you've really not been in church, you probably still heard about Jonah, and people tell the story in a lot of different ways. So over the next 3 weeks, we're going to be looking at the story of Jonah. And the title of this series is Fish Food. Fish Food. Asking ourselves, am I fish food? Am I something, that should be tossed overboard because of some decisions in my life, or am I on the right path? And so we're going to look at some of those things. And the first week, today, we're going to talk about going down, all right? So we're going to be looking in Jonah chapter 1 today and talking about going down in our series on fish food. So first of all, let's set the tables correctly. The prophet Jonah was a real person, all right? He's not just a character in a familiar story or a parable. Now, we hear him talked about in 2 Kings 14:25, and even Jesus tells the story of Jonah in Matthew chapter 12, verses 39 to 41. But I want you to understand that the book of Jonah in the Old Testament is an account that is historic and true. So here's the kind of the groundwork. Jonah is a prophet and is seeking God, and God tells him to go to Nineveh. Now, Nineveh is quite possibly at that time the greatest city in the world. It is huge. It's powerful. It is the capital of the Assyrian Empire, and it is a nation that is despised by the Jews. They were the most godless, cruel people to have ever lived. So Jonah wants nothing to do with them. He doesn't want them to be saved. He doesn't want God's message to go to them. These are people that have been just keeping Jewish people in bondage, and everyone's afraid of them, and they're so powerful, and they're so vicious. And Jonah's like, get them, God. Destroy them, God. Don't save them, God. Wow. Do you ever get like that with quote-unquote enemies? Do you ever yell at your TV or feel that way against another nation or another leader? Jonah's we could relate then, because Jonah wanted nothing to do with them. And their destruction would literally be an answer to his prayer. He would be like, destroy them. I think he probably prayed daily, God, destroy my enemies, destroy these corrupt people, these people that are keeping us in bondage. And so here's Jonah and the city of Nineveh. And you might say, well, that pretty much is the stars of the book of Jonah. It's either Jonah or it's Nineveh or it's the big fish. And I would have to tell you, the main character is none of those things. It's not the prophet. It's not the big fish. It's God. It's God. In this 4-chapter story, we find that God is mentioned 38 times. This book and this sermon series deals with one crucial question. How do I respond to the word and the will of God? How do you respond to the word and the will of God? Can God ask you to do anything, or do you have, don't ask me that, God. Don't ask me to go there, God. Don't ask me to talk to them, God. Or can God ask you to do anything and talk to anyone about him? You know, that's what the crux of this story is. And it's very easy for us to get kind of judgmental and think, well, they deserve it, or they shouldn't have been mean, and then this wouldn't have happened to them. Well, we were all pretty nasty before God saved us, right? If you're a follower of Jesus today, then you've got history that probably you're not greatly proud about, but God saves us. And you know, sometimes it's the worst sinner that becomes the greatest messenger for what God wants to do. Jonah doesn't see that. He doesn't see potential in Nineveh turning around. He just wants them out of his life. He wants a better, easier life. He wants what he wants. And he doesn't want what God wants. And so we pick up the story in Jonah chapter 1, verse 1 to 3. It says, the Lord gave this message to Jonah, son of Amittai. All right, so this is the story. This is what God says. God says, get up and go to the great city of Nineveh. Announce my judgment against it, because I have seen how wicked its people are. But Jonah got up and he went the opposite direction. Why? To get away from the Lord. He went down to the port of Joppa, where he found a ship leaving for Tarshish. He bought a ticket and he went on board, hoping to escape from the Lord by sailing to Tarshish. This is crazy. All right, God says, I want you to get up and go to Nineveh. And instead, Jonah gets up and he goes the opposite direction. And Tarshish, represented the extreme opposite end of the known world from Nineveh. So if you were to take a map back in those days, and some believe the earth was not round but square, some believe there was edges, but on a map to them at that time, it would have been like going from this side of the map, where Joppa is in the Mediterranean Sea, and going as far as you can go the other direction, to the end of the earth, to the edge of the world, as far as they knew. That's how far he wanted to get away from God. He didn't just run a little bit and turn back and see if God's watching. He booked a ticket to the end of the world, to the extreme destination, as far as anyone would go. What some believe today would be modern day Spain is where Tarshish was. So you would get in the port, near what we would call today Jerusalem, and get in the boat there and go all the way across the Mediterranean Sea and beyond to Spain. Nobody went that far. But see, Jonah, he was serious as a heart attack. He was not going to Nineveh. He was not going to obey God. He was afraid and he was on the run. That's crazy. He's made this attempt to run as far as possible and then to sail even farther, right? You see, to fear God is to stand in awe of him. But to be afraid of God is to run away from him. Let me say that again. To fear God is to stand in awe of him. But to be afraid of God is to run from him. See, he's afraid of God. He's not in fear of God or has that holy awe of God or reverence for God or respect for God. No, he's just running from God. And he's gone a long, long, long way. So he's making himself a candidate to become fish food. Because we know kind of what happens, and I'm going to explain exactly how he gets there. But it goes back to the title of this series, Fish Food. How does Jonah become fish food? Well, here are 4 fish food factors. 4 ways that led him to becoming fish food. Number 1 is big fear. He's got big fear. It says, but the Lord hurled a powerful wind over the sea, causing a violent storm that threatened to break the ship apart. Fearing for their lives, the desperate sailors shouted to their gods for help. They've got all kinds of gods, and they're calling out to their gods for help. And they start throwing the cargo overboard to lighten up the ship. But all this time, Jonah is in the bottom part of the ship, totally asleep. So the captain went down after him, and he said, "How can you sleep at a time like this?" He shouted, "Get up and pray to your God. Maybe he will pay attention to us and spare our lives." It's amazing what fear can do to us. So here is Jonah. He's on the way. But fear, it will lead us to defiance. That's what fear does. When you're thinking only about yourself, you turn your back on God. That's defiance. And that's the first step. Jonah turns his back on God. And then from defiance, it becomes denial. You know, don't be fooled by peace. You know, peace isn't always promised. Sometimes I've heard Christians saying, "Well, I don't have a peace about it." Well, you don't always get a peace about it, but you get Jesus, who is the Prince of Peace, and he's in us. But you don't always have this, "Oh, it just seems great." And that's what Jonah wanted. Jonah wanted to just feel great about going to Nineveh, but he didn't. And so he goes, he gets on a boat, and he must think, "Hey, I have no problem falling asleep now." He's got peace. But he's really in denial. Why? Because of defiance. He turned his back on God, and now he's sleeping in the boat, and denial becomes doubt. You see, we nominate others more qualified when we don't think we can do it. You know, like, pick somebody else, God. Get somebody who speaks better. The Bible's filled with people who are nominating somebody else to do the job God called them to do. That's what doubt does. When we have this kind of reaction to God's calling, when there's defiance and we turn our back and then there's denial, we go, "Well, I got a peace, so I must be in the right." And now we've got doubt that I was ever even called to do it. But that leads to depression. And you see, there's no distance where we can go that we won't feel disobedience. You know, no matter how far he went, no matter how deep he slept, he knew he was disobeying God, and he was on the run. And you know what depression brings? Pardon me. Doom. It brings doom. You friends, some storms just happen, but storms caused by our sin must be responded to. There are things that we're going through we're going through them because of our sin, because of our running, because of our denial, because of our doubt, because of our depression, because we don't trust God, we don't obey God. And now on the high seas, there's doom. Doom is coming, and all of the sailors are already sensing it. They're throwing stuff overboard. And it's because big fear has crept into the boat. Second of all, there's big fault. Look what it says. Then the crew cast lots to see which of them had offended the gods and caused this terrible storm to come. Man, it's crazy where we will turn for wisdom and where we'll turn for help. And then we're living in a culture that's looking at all kinds of gods to give them a signal, to tell them what's right and wrong. And when they did this, the lots identified Jonah as the culprit. Even the enemy knows when we're running from God. "Why has this awful storm come down on us?" they demanded. And Jonah's there hearing these accusations. They're like, "Who are you? What is your line of work? What country are you from? What's your nationality?" And Jonah answers, "I am Hebrew. I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the land." And the sailors become even more terrified when they heard this. They had already told them he was running from the Lord. And so now they're like, what did you do? Why did you do it? And since the storm was getting worse all the time, they asked him, what should we do to stop the storm? And Jonah, he says, throw me into the sea. Toss me overboard. Chuck me into the water. And it will become calm again. I know that this terrible storm is all my fault. And instead, the sailors, they don't want to do that. They don't want to commit murder. They don't want to throw this guy over. And they're kind of concerned about, going against Jonah's God. So they row even harder to try to get the ship to land. But the stormy sea was too violent for them. They couldn't make it. So there in verses 7 to 13, we have this confession. We have this realization that there is a man of God not pursuing God, but a God still pursuing him. Notice the questions of the sailors in verse 8. What have you done? Who are you? What did you do? Where are you from? Why is this happening? Can you imagine the embarrassment of having to admit I'm a servant and a prophet of God? Who at the moment just happens to be running in the opposite direction? Ouch. And he's implicated all of you. He's got other people involved. But here, how ironic, the lost are trying to save the found. It's crazy. Jews were supposed to be the blessing to the whole world. You read that in Genesis 12, 1 to 3. They were supposed to be the blessing. They were supposed to bring good things wherever they went. But now the lost are trying to save the found. They're trying to save the good, those that have set themselves apart. You see, I believe a believer in God running from God is dangerous to everyone, including himself. So Jonah chose to put the crew at risk and to put Nineveh without hope, all because he was selfish and all because he was disobedient. Our decisions matter. Our no to God impacts more than just us. It matters. God's love is way too big to stand back and do nothing. Which leads us to point 3. Big fish. Oh yeah. You see, the big fear led to the big fault. Now the big fish. So then they cried out, verse 14, to the Lord, Jonah's God. Now they're crying out to Jonah's God. Oh Lord, they pleaded, don't make us die for this man's sin. And don't hold us responsible for his death, O Lord. You have sent this storm upon him for your own good reasons. And says, then the sailors picked up Jonah, they threw him into the raging sea, and the storm stopped at once. So they throw him into the sea. And we're not told what the giant fish is. Is it a Goliath grouper? Is it a whale shark? Is it a whale? Is it something else? We don't know. You know what? If I had been God, I think I would have used a great white shark. That sounds horrible. Maybe a giant squid or a school of piranhas. I'll show this guy for disobeying me. I'll show this guy for going the opposite direction. Jaws, the prequel. That's what we'll do. No. Even in the midst of all of this chaos, God intervenes, and he's still looking for good to come. You see, his discipline is an opportunity, yet again, for change. And you know what? God will always keep disciplining us. We learn that in Hebrews 12, 1 to 11. he will keep disciplining us until we submit. That's not meanness, that's love. So my big question is, are you fish food? Are you? Are you running? Are you disobeying? Maybe you're all self-righteous and you've already decided who needs the message, who needs to be saved, and who needs to be judged. You've got pride that says you're in a party that's more holy than another party. Well, you know what? No matter what it may be, if you're running, if you're not going the path that God has chosen for you, your splash is coming. Your encounter is coming. You see, maybe you're already there. Maybe you're already in a dark, stinky place. And you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. I don't know why I'm so alone. I don't know why I got myself into this. You feel like you're starting to be devoured and have allowed pity and hopelessness to cover you in the stench of sin. Like I can't even imagine what the inside of that fish would have smelt like or been like. But you see, Jonah gave himself the option of choice. He forgot that the will of God is not an option. It's an obligation. It's an opportunity. But when we run from God, we will always be going down. We'll always be going down. Are you sacrificing your destiny for danger? Are you giving up your strength for a storm? Have you cashed in your faith for a fish? You see, this isn't the end of Jonah. Obviously, you know that. Next week, you'll discover how he's rescued. But this isn't even the end of this chapter. And I want to talk about something that I think gets left out many times in this story. I call it, number 4, the big finish. Look at verse 16 and 17. The sailors were awestruck by the Lord's great power. They offered him a sacrifice and vowed to serve him. Do you hear this, you guys? Verse 16. The sailors are awestruck by the Lord's great power. Not any Lord, Jonah's God, the one who calmed the sea. You know, the story starts out, they've got all kinds of gods. They're offering sacrifices to their gods. They're praying to their gods. And now by verse 16, they are awestruck by the Lord's great power, and they are offering him sacrifice and vowing to serve him. Verse 17 says, now the Lord had arranged for a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was inside the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. So Jonah's taken care of. But don't skip over verse 16. I think it's the highlight of chapter 1. You know, because I've heard it preached many times, and we talk about Jonah, we talk about Nineveh, we talk about running, we talk about the boat, we talk about the storm, we talk about the fish. But let's talk about these dudes on this ship, and they're all getting saved. They're all getting their life in God, and they're choosing from here on out to serve him and live for him. Man, to me, that is headline of chapter 1. God uses his power to stop Jonah from running and also to show the world he is real. Long before the disciples saw Jesus calm the storm, right here, God calms the storm. And Jonah's gone. So who's he calming the storm for? For pagan fishermen, sailors, so that they will turn their lives from gods to the one true God. And the whole ship full of pagan sailors are now offering worship and vowing to serve God forever. That's amazing. You see, thing I love about God, one of the many things I love about God is never singular focused, all right? Yes, he cares about Jonah. Yes, he cares about Nineveh. Yes, he cares about the call. But his amazing power stretches towards all who will listen, and he will exhaust his creation to draw others to himself. So cool. Running won't save you, but God's mercy will. How cool is that? You see, he cared about Jonah, and I think he declared to the sailors, you are loved, you belong, you have purpose. He's saying it to all of us. And I don't know where you're at today. Maybe you're on the run. Maybe you've turned your back. Maybe things are cool. But wherever it is, God has a plan, a mission, someone that he wants you to talk to, encourage, pray for, be a blessing to. Not gossip, not run, not become one of those religious people that always knows what everyone else should be doing and then does nothing themselves. Let's be wholehearted followers of Jesus. There's a good ending that we're going to talk about Jonah next week and the next week after that. That's all right. But maybe you're on the boat. You know, maybe you've just been like taking it all in. You've been watching. Maybe you've been observing Christians and they've let you down. You know what? Me too. I've been let down by Christians more than any other people. It's true. And I've let myself down. It's not always easy obeying God and following God and doing what he tells you to do. And so, wherever you're at with that, it is easy to stop and turn around and return to where you're supposed to go. Man, if you're running from God, stop and turn around and tell him you're sorry. Ask him for forgiveness. Because he's not just the God of a second chance. He's the God of another chance. God loves you. God has a purpose and a plan for your life. He really does. If you don't know him today, simply say, God, I love you. I believe in your son, Jesus. And there's some storm in my life that I ask Jesus to calm, to bring this situation into a revelation of who you really are, God. Help me to turn from my old life back to you. God, help me to follow you. So forgive me of my sin, my past, my junk, my yesterday. And today, may I be like those sailors on the deck who once had all kinds of gods, once had all kinds of things that they were focused on, but now have focused on you and have committed to serve you the rest of their life. That's what we're doing today, God. That's what we're doing. And so, God, join us as we make fresh starts with you. And God, for anyone today that is beginning a brand new life, I pray that you would confirm it and put people in their life that will help them walk with you. Yeah. Lord, it's easy to see how we can become fish food. But Lord, I just pray that you'd pluck us out of that situation before we're tossed in, and that we would choose to turn our lives to you. Yeah, instead of going down, look up and see God's message is true and that he loves each one of us. All right? Hey, that's my heart for this week. Join us next week for Fish Food Part 2. All right? God bless you. Peace.